Today we're talking with Jay Walker-Smith, who's the knowledge lead for Kantar, one of the country's preeminent consumer insights tracking firms, and Walker is one of the best in the business at tracking consumer insights. We're very excited to have his perspective today on wellness and how it impacts the different generations. Hi, I'm Terry Slavic-Siuki. I'm a community development and placemaking consultant working with the team at Rancho Viejo to bring this amazing community to life, and it's truly a pleasure. And Walker, it's a pleasure to be here with you today too at Ranch Camp. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks very much for having me. I'm really excited to be here for our conversation. Thank you.
We're really excited today to be able to host you here at Rancho Viejo and talk about wellness and well-being in the context of this great environment. Because I personally believe, and I know you share the same concept, that a community can really support how one's life can be best lived.
I completely agree, and I'm really excited to be here today and talk about it. So let's jump in.
So Walker, I'm interested to know, in all that you do every single day, how do you stay on track, or on top, I should say, of consumer trends as it relates to wellness?
Well, we do a lot of different things at Kantar to try and bring it all together with a central view of what's going on in the wellness space. So we start with the kind of survey research that is sort of the stereotypical things that market researchers do.
Sure.
We add to that the insights that we get from on-the-ground cultural experts in over 6 dozen cities around the world. And we keep up with all the big trends that are going on. So it's not just the things that we see, but it's the things that other experts see, the things that other companies see. We're just trying to take all of this information, find the key thread that ties it all together, and bring that to the attention of our clients.
What are the 2 top trends you're tracking right now that you think would most have the greatest impact on wellness or well-being? What would those 2 trends be, Walker?
Well, I think there are a couple of things going on in the wellness space right now. So the importance of home has really changed as a result of the pandemic, but it was even evolving prior to that. But home is the center of life, is increasingly a part of what we see in the wellness space. And then I think the other thing that's going on is all things social, all things analog. We refer to it as all things human scale.
Unplugging, if you will.
Well, you know, we thought we were moving into a digital world. Well, digital was going to knock everything human off the edge, and it was all going to be digital. And then we went through this involuntary global experiment in an exclusively digital lifestyle.
And what was the outcome of that?
People couldn't wait to get back out the door and make, if you will, kind of an analog connection with other people. So the future is really the fusion of digital and analog, not the replacement of analog by digital.
You know, when we sit here amongst this great community of Rancho Viejo and 23,000 acres of natural open space, 17,000 preserved forevermore, what role does community have to play in well-being today?
Well, community plays a huge role because it is social connectedness that makes people well. We know that. There's a lot of research about that. Isolation is bad for us. We saw that during the pandemic. The kind of lockdowns and quarantines we had set off a global epidemic of anxiety and depressive disorders. We're still not through that. So we know that community is enormously important, and people want to live in spaces where they can connect with others and make these kinds of social connections in their lifestyles. So I don't think we should overlook the importance of community in how people feel about their wellness and their health and all the things that are important to them when it comes to a broader sense of well-being. But I do think digital plays a huge role in that, and I think we're beginning to understand digital as being a way to make the human scale experience better.
So digital is a way to improve our human scale experience and interactions with each other then, if anything else.
Yes, I think what we have discovered is that the best role of digital is to make the human experience even better.
So I'd like to transition for a minute, Walker, because you really are a true expert in generations and generational thoughts and how that impacts the marketplace and how it impacts how we create communities and what we do with people all over the world. So I'd like you to talk to us a minute, if you would, about millennials and how are they prioritizing wellness in their lives today?
When it comes to wellness, they think of wellness in an experiential sense. They want it to be immersive. They want it to be engaging. They want it to be something that is more enjoyable than just somehow thinking about their health. They are looking for that experiential element. And I think that wellness is becoming more important to them as their lives are becoming more and more settled, as they're reaching important milestones, life stage milestones, age milestones. You know, millennials are getting older. The early millennials are over 40 now, so they're not these kids that we remember from 20 and 25 years ago. These are adults who make up the heart of the consumer marketplace these days.
I agree with that completely, and reflecting back on the pandemic and how that millennial generation showed up at the ranch during the pandemic, we heard a lot of stories about families making friends with families they didn't know before, and just spending more time. You talk about authenticity and experiences. I think that's a group that I think really does that a lot more in a community context perhaps than some others do.
Yeah. When we talked a lot about families moving out of big cities during the pandemic and taking up residence in other parts of the country, we're really talking about a millennial pattern there. Those were the families that were making those relocation decisions. But I do think they approach that in a more experiential way than we have seen with some prior generations, and they are very much focused on the family experience, not just for the family, but also for, you know, how well it makes them in their own lives.
Let's talk about the Gen X group for a moment. So, you know, the inevitable sandwich generation, or the middle child in American demographics.
Right.
I'm interested in your perspective about how Gen X thinks about community as they're moving into their next stage in life.
So Gen X, you know, is this generation that grew up in the shadow of baby boomers, and they've been a lot more interested in the quality of things than kind of the quantity of things. And this is a generation that has always kind of been at the back of the baby boomer line. So, you know, rather than stand in that line, they've always tried to figure out some way to kind of get in the side door.
That's well said. It's a good metaphor.
20 years ago, we were describing Gen X as a generation that would be much more focused on family values.
I remember that, yeah.
Than baby boomers, a generation that would be much more focused on beginning to fight for and be an activist for things related to the communities in which they lived. I think we saw some of that. We see a lot more of that now with successive generations. But it was Gen X who came along and began to reintroduce community into the conversation after baby boomers had really said, no, it's all about me.
Interesting.
And it's all about the individual.
So what are Gen X focused on then now as they look to the next stage of their lives in the context of community?
They're focused on retirement. You know, again, we think of Gen X as being this sort of young cohort that we remember from all the newspaper headlines 20, 25 or more years ago, and actually the oldest part of that cohort is on the verge of turning 60. We have certainly heard that a lot of them are very intent on trying to retire a little bit earlier than baby boomers have done. Remains to be seen whether they can afford to do that. In fact, we've heard that millennials are you know, sort of eyeing 50 as the right time to retire.
You've touched on boomers already. What are they placing priority on besides pickleball?
They want to be active. They want to be youthful. They want to be participatory. They want to be outside as much as they can. They want to be moving around. So baby boomers are kind of an active generation like that. But again, it is all driven by this deep sense of youthfulness that has always characterized the baby boomer generation. You know, when Bob Dylan sang years ago, "Forever Young," he meant it. And it's just been true of baby boomers ever since. In that sense, they were kind of an easy cohort to design a community for.
Interesting.
You know, you fill it with youthful activities.
Yeah, the ranch life here is not only about the land itself, but it's really about the very different levels of well-being across all spectrums, whether it's mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, social, civic well-being.
Yeah.
What would you tell a developer to do more of to try and support wellness in a more holistic way?
You ticked all the boxes there about the important elements of human scale engagement. And I think it is that kind of physicality, that kind of psychological connection to a place that is beyond a house per se. So everything that you can do to make the community as important to people's lives as the house or the home per se, I think is the important element of that. So it is build out the community and think of it as a community that people can engage in with others and with things that keep them involved in a human scale sort of way with their lifestyles.
That's great. And you can just feel it, right?
You
just
can
feel it.
You can feel it, but it's not just there without something creating that feeling. So that feeling has to be made. And I think Rancho Mission Viejo has done a really good job of bringing all of these elements together so that when you're here, you have that feeling.
Well, I'll tell you, it's really rewarding because there is such a pride of ownership on the part of the residents who live in Rancho Mission Viejo, talking about how this community makes them feel more healthy and more well and really supports their sense of well-being. So the bar is high, right, to continue to keep doing that and delivering those ideas.
Yeah. It's retail, it's restaurants, it's green spaces in particular. All of these things were increasing pre-pandemic. We've got to make sure we come back to them as we look ahead to the future.
So well-designed parks that interweave within the fabric of a community, that create great neighborhoods.
Sure, a huge part of it, yes. Anything to do with physical connection. So what I describe as human scale is kind of the physicality of engagement in the marketplace. Digital was all about kind of the data engagement in the marketplace. Human scale is more about the physicality. So if you're looking to do things human scale, look for things that involve physical engagement and physical interaction, and then figure out how you can use the data resource of digital to make that physical connection even stronger and even more enjoyable.
So get your fingernails dirty, get outside, get in the dirt, pick a lemon from the orchard, enjoy an avocado.
Get your fingernails dirty and then use your smartphone. Yeah.
So Walker, when you track trends, consumer trends, decisions people make, what are some of the things you see them considering through the lens of wellness when they decide where to buy or where to live in a home or a community?
In the past, when people have chosen a place to live, a lot of it's been driven by work. People have moved to where the jobs are. And then when they don't need the job anymore, they move someplace else. I think the primary thing that's going on in people's minds right now when they choose a place to live is life. It's not work. It's how do I want to live my life? And so then all the trends that affect the ways in which people think about their lives and their aspirations are affecting the decisions that they're making about where they want to live. We have this phrase that we use now to describe the change of work. We describe it as hybrid work. But I think the phrase hybrid work is wrong. It's more about hybrid life.
Oh, interesting.
It is a lifestyle that has become hybrid. Work is a part of that. But there are a lot of other things that are a part of that too. When you put all those things together, I'm not sure why we're emphasizing the work part of it, because it seems to me like the life part of it is a lot more important. I want my life to be in everything.
So if work is where life happens and life is where work happens, right?
Yeah.
You're saying there really is no sense of balance. It's all one. I want my world to reflect my values.
I think we've got to quit talking about work-life balance, because people don't want a part of their existence that's all about work and just doesn't feel good. And then you get life on the weekends. People just don't want that anymore.
Right.
People are saying, I want work to feel the same as everything else in my life. I want everything to reflect these kinds of values. And so when I think about a place to live, it's a place that feels like it's reflective of all the values that are important to me. So I think life is driving decisions about where to live these days, which is very different than the past when it was much more about work driving the places where we lived.
As we close our conversation today, which has been so fun, it's been great.
It's been great.
I think that the values of the ranch and the ranch code and the history and the legacy of this particular beautiful piece of land really drives how this community has come to life, and conversely, drives how wellness can come to life for people who choose to live at Rancho Mission Viejo.
I think you can feel it when you're on the property, when you're in this place, in the space here. You feel all of that reflected. It's all brought together. It is about a first priority on life. Everything else then fits into that, and I think it makes for a great community and a great place for people to live.
Thank you, Walker.
Thank you.